Gain flexibility with Undo and the History panel. Hello, one major feature you'll undoubtedly use in Photoshop is the ability to undo your steps. By understanding how Undo and the History panel work, you'll no longer fear you're creating irreversible changes. Let's jump into a project and explore them. You already saw me undo one step throughout this entire course. That's useful when you want to identify a layer on the canvas. I select it from the Layers panel, and while on the Move tool, I try to identify it by changing its position. This works most of the time, and it's one of my preferred methods of discovering layers. This is all possible with Ctrl-Z. It doesn't make sense for you to put it back in its original position manually. Instead, you undo that step with the hotkey I just mentioned, or you could go to Edit, Undo State Change. I'm sure you're aware of how Undo works in most programs, but the difference in Photoshop is this. Press Ctrl-Z once and you'll undo your action. Press it again and it will redo. So the program will not take you yet another step back, instead it moves you forward. This is helpful when you want to toggle back and forth between two options. For example, I'll add a brightness and a contrast adjustment layer, and I'll turn the first slider down to about -35. Now I'll press Ctrl-Z to undo it. Ctrl-Z yet again to redo that step. And now I can enter full screen mode by using the F key twice and see if my action improves the project. That's why I really appreciate the way this tool works. You may ask yourself, how can you go back several steps? Well, let me do a few more things to this project and you'll see your options. I'll resize the image to about half its size. It's far too big and I'm not happy with it. I'll also increase the saturation for the flower. OK, and I'll add a few rectangles to this A5 paper. Let's open up the History panel. So several steps are being added. Photoshop records everything. It should be docked here, or you can go to Window, History. Increase the size by clicking and dragging from this area. If you focus on this new panel, you'll see it describes everything I did in the project. So now, if we want to go back several steps, we can first use Ctrl-Z, and that takes us back one step. You can see that reflected in this panel immediately. Now I'll use Ctrl-Alt-Z to go back yet again. And now my action is greyed out. Ctrl-Alt-Z can be used as much as you want. As you can see, I'm constantly using it, and step by step I'm going backwards. You don't have to have this panel opened to use the hotkey. I'm keeping it here so you can better see what's going on. And you can use it immediately. You don't have to use Ctrl-Z, then Ctrl-Alt-Z. It's your choice. If you want to go back to a specific step, for example the image resize, you can click on it and Photoshop will take you to that state. So if that was a mistake, just click above it and now your project will be reverted. However, if you now perform another action, say draw a rectangle somewhere, you'll see your greyed out history is gone. Photoshop allows you to go back in time, but you can't adjust one step and then expect all your other actions to be applied over it. So that's something to remember. Let's sum it up. Ctrl-Z takes you back one step, press it again and it takes you forward. Ctrl-Alt-Z is used to undo an infinite number of actions. You can also use the History panel if you don't want to use that hotkey too many times. I recommend you have 20 to 30 steps in your History panel. For our web design work, that should be enough, and it's not very taxing on your computer. If you require more, then there might be a problem with the way you work. If you're more comfortable with 50 or 75 steps, open the preferences with Ctrl-K and go to Performance. From here, you can edit the number of steps Photoshop will remember. The maximum is 1,000, but I highly doubt you'll need that many. One last thing before we go is the ability to revert to the original project state. Say you really messed up and you want to start over. Using Ctrl-Alt-Z isn't the best choice. Instead, you can click on this area here, and everything will be discarded. By the way, if you save your PSD file, all these greyed out actions will not appear the next time you open it. Photoshop discards them, so that's something to notice. I don't like to move my cursor away from the canvas, so to revert back to my original state, I like to use F12. This does the exact same thing, but I think it's faster. And that's the Undo feature and the History panel. You have this file attached, jump to it and recreate my steps. If you have questions, just let me know through the comments sections. Have fun!